Hi, and welcome to this online course. Wish you all the very best and happy learning.
Life is important. That's what my teacher, Professor S.K. Ramachandra Rao, used to speak. Whatever we do is for the sake of the life, and we want to live a very happy life as such. So the motto of all is a good life and nothing else than good life. So even when we are communicating with others, it is for that only. And communication in Sanskrit is called as samvahana. The word samvahana comes from a dhatu, a root, vah, and vah has given rise to several other words like vahana, pravaha, etc. And when you see these words which have come from the root, we can clearly see that there is something moving from one point to another point. When you say pravaha, it may be vidyut pravaha, electrical current, which starts from one point and moves to another point. Maybe it is the pravaha, jala pravaha, the flow of water from one place to another place, etc. etc. Even in samvahana, something should be flowing from one point to another point. What is that which flows? What is that which moves from one point to another point? Which are those 2 points? So when we just think of some ideas move from one brain or one mind to another mind. Samvahana is that process wherein concepts from one mind move to the other mind such. So when we say communicate or communication, it means that the ideas are moving from one mind to another mind clearly, and maybe the concepts are flowing. If that does not occur, then it is not communication. So when we just see, sometimes we go on talking for hours together. The other person seems to listen to. He hears, and after an hour or so, that man says, "No, something was talked, and maybe he went on speaking, and I went on listening. No idea has been gathered, no concept has been gathered." Then that process of talking and hearing is not communication. Sometimes maybe you give a small sign. It's a sign, it's a gesture, and the gesture communicates the meaning, the idea which is there in your mind, then that itself is communication. So maybe communication is that process in which there is a clear transfer of a concept from one mind to another mind. If the concept transfer does not happen, then there is no communication as such. So throughout the life, you find people communicating. Sometimes it is communication, sometimes it is the mere process of talking and listening and nothing else. So communicate properly. One great thing which is required is called as Parangita Prajna in Sanskrit. Para means other, Ingita means that is not hidden, Prajna means the conscious. Now, we should know what is there in the minds of the others, what is hidden in the minds of the others. Once you know what is hidden in the minds of the others, the communication becomes proper. Otherwise, no, we go on talking for hours together, the other person also seems to be listening, but no communication occurs. For example, sometimes these women purchase something, they would have gone to the shops, select and spent a lot of time in selecting, and they want to tell it to the neighbor's house, and then they go there, and at the time the child in the house has fallen down, and then it is crying, and however much this lady tries to speak to the other lady, nothing gets communicated because the whole mind is having some other idea. At that time, if the woman simply speaks about the child and then its pain and then taking the child to the doctor, etc., every word which the woman speaks is understood by the other lady, because that is the need of the life at that time, and this lady seems to have a Parangita Prajna, or she knows the psychology of the other woman as such. So whenever we are speaking, we should just think of what is required, what is needed for the other with whom we are communicating. So many times it's one mistake which we do. I know something, I want to spread it to the others, I want to tell it to the others. Sometimes I want to make the other feel that I know a lot, and then I go on speak. So the other person does not listen to me at all, he does not understand me because it is not his field of experience at all. So many times you go to the doctors and the doctors go on saying the recent innovations, recent findings, recent research on the heart, and maybe as patients we never require that. What we require is a solace, what we require is a consolation, nothing else. And the doctors, they go on speaking about the recent research to show that their knowledge, and nothing gets communicated because that research is not needed for us. Go to the engineers and sometimes they go on speaking about the signal system, that this and all which we never understand because nothing is required for us. These things are details are not required for us. So whenever we try to communicate, we should remember that whatever we are communicating is needed for the person who is in front of us. So unneeded things cannot be communicated sometimes. So this is one principle actually which we should remember in communication. When we are talking to somebody, we should know their interests and their needs also. And usually needs and interests, they spring from life. Maybe an agriculturist has his way of living and his life needs certain things, some knowledge, and maybe his interest is in certain things. So if I am speaking to an agriculturist, I should speak in his language. That means about his interests and his needs. And my interests and my needs may not actually go with his interests and his needs as such. So maybe the communication, as I say, should be life-centered. Needs and interests are motivational in understanding anything. I understand what I need. I understand what I am interested in. So maybe a communicator is to be well aware of the needs and interests of his communicatee as such. But sometimes, as Professor Peters and others would say, the needs are not motivational because needs are not known to us at all. A child does not know what needs. Child knows what it wants. Ask a child what he wants. He says a chocolate. He would simply say he requires ice cream. He needs ice cream. He wants ice cream. They are all wants and they are not the needs. The parents, maybe adults, we know what is needed by a child. Even sometimes the adults, we do not know the needs. We go to the doctor and doctors say you need calcium, you need iron, etc., etc. So the needs are not known. What we know are only wants, and wants are motivational, but not the needs. This is the idea of Professor Peter Pope as such. And Professor R.S. Peters once again says the interests also cannot be depended upon. Maybe when you take children, many of the children are sporadic and they're in a way nomadic. They wander from here to there. They are not constant. They are not. There is no perseverance. There is no consistency in the interest as such. A child sees cricket, he wants to be a cricketer. The next day he sees football. The interest is gone in the cricket, and now there is a new interest like football. Maybe the children of Kerala, they like to play basketball because they see basketball. But people of Karnataka may try to play cricket because they see that actually. Interests developed by exposure as such. And once again, these interests they do not continue. There was a film like Shankarabharana. Everybody got interested, whoever saw Shankarabharana got interested in classical music for a few days, and then Sagara Sangama came, and then automatically their interest was shifted to Bharatanatyam, and once again for 15-20 days, and automatically there came a film on Kung Fu, interest changes, you see. Maybe karate and Kung Fu become their interest. So, first of all, we should see to it that interests become consistent, and we should maintain the interest as such. So maybe sometimes it so happens that what we want to communicate, the children or maybe whoever is in front of us communicate, does not feel that it is needed. It's our responsibility to make the communicator feel that whatever we are communicating is needed. And once you make him feel that this is needed, then no child, nobody feels that he needs mathematics, but mathematics is needed. Without mathematics, life does not go on. But nobody seems to be interested, nobody asks any child as such whether mathematics is needed. The child would say mathematics is not needed. But we know that it is needed. So now, when we are communicating, if we feel that whatever we are communicating is really needed to the society, needed to the communicating, our first responsibility is to make the communicator feel that whatever we are communicating is very much needed and very much needed in the life. And interests come from exposition. Maybe there is a small helmet, there is a small village nearby, near Shimoga called as Mattu. In Mattu, most of the children are interested in Gamaka, most of the children are interested in classical music as such. Whereas children in the Shimoga town, they are not interested in either in Gamaka or classical music because they are not exposed to. Those children who are exposed to Hindi songs, film songs, they are interested in Hindi film songs. And none of the people at the villages, they are interested in golf because they are never exposed to golf. So many of us are not interested in a very nice language like French. French is an excellent language, but we are not interested because we are not exposed to French at all, language at all. So interest depends upon exposure, and that's the first point. First of all, expose them, and the exposure will be nice experiences. Once we are exposed, once the community gets exposed to the experience, you should feel it a pleasant experience, a happy experience. Maybe a child starts singing, and automatically if you say that is not right, this is not right, and go on criticizing him in a severe way, the child loses the interest. So when the child sings, he makes a trial after exposure. If you say very nice, and maybe you go on appreciating, automatically his interest in that particular field goes on developing. So this is the way to develop interest. First of all, expose, that the exposure be a pleasant one, and once the communicator starts working on that, appreciate him, encourage him, and then automatically the interest goes on increasing. And then of course every point that we go on appreciating and then giving it the proper feedback, not very destructive criticism as such, but a very constructive criticism later on when he can just take criticism as such. The thing is, there will be an excellent communication between the communicator and the communicatee, and automatically you will be successful as communicators. It is not the words which are important, it is the meaning of the words which are important. And when we say communication, the meanings are to be communicated and not the words. Maybe one of the great poets in Kannada, Allama Prabhudeva, a Vachanakara, he clearly speaks and he gives a theory itself as such. Padavanarpisaಬಹುದಲ್ಲದೆ ಪದಾರ್ಥವನರ್ಪಿಸಬಾರದು. That's what he says. We can only give words and we can never give the meanings of the words. Meanings are given by the communicator himself. For example, it so happened one day in a school that the children were quarreling in the ground, and the headmaster saw them, and headmaster called them and asked them as to why they are quarreling. And then they said, such and such a teacher has asked us to quarrel in the ground. Then the teacher was summoned, he was called to the office, and then he was sent quarrel. And here, headmaster asked him, did you tell them to quarrel in the ground? And then the teacher said, sir, they were quarreling in the classroom, and I told them that don't quarrel in the classroom, And that's what I said. So, the actually sentence by the teacher was not to quarrel in the classroom, and the meaning got by the students was that they should quarrel in the grounds, though that was not said. The thing is, the meaning by the teacher and meaning which is received by the students, that became quite different lessons. So many times we speak something and it means something else to the others as such. Because language is such a fishy concept, you see. The thing is, language has several dimensions, and automatically the meanings when we are communicating, we are trying to communicate, it becomes so many times, the people go on repeating, that is what I mean to say is, what I mean to say is, what I mean to say is. It means that I am giving some words and the meaning is not properly being communicated as such. So it is very, very difficult to communicate meaning, though we transact with words. And wherever we transact with words, it is called as a mere verbal communication. Mere verbal communication. So, lot of our communication is simply verbal, and meaning does not get communicated, only the words are transferred. Even in education, it so happens that you give some words, sentences to the students, they gather those words and sentences, repeat them back, and then neither the teacher knows the meaning, nor the students know the meaning of the words as. So many times I have asked the people, what do you mean by experience? A word which has been used several times in life. So many times we have not contemplated over the word. We don't have the meaning of the word. We have gone on using the word, and we do not know the clear meaning of experience. So many of us do not know clear meaning of experience. So many times in the workshops I have asked the people as to what is a village, and never have got a clear definition for the village by the people, because we use the word, but we do not know the meaning of the word village at all. Experience, whatever we do does not become experience at all. Experience has two clear parts in it. One is acting and reflecting over the action. Action plus reflection. If the action becomes sophisticated, refined, then it becomes experience. If not, it does not become experience at all. Even in communicating something, if I go on thinking about my communication, contemplate over whether I have sent the meaning to the other person or not, and then if my communication becomes better and better and better, then I can say I am an experienced communicator, otherwise not. Because this aspect of experience always has two parts. One is action, the other is reflection. Action plus reflection is experience. Otherwise, mere action can never be experience at all. Such clear ideas, when they are there, then only the communication becomes very clear. Similarly, village, I have asked several people, they go on giving so many criteria. They say agriculture, that, this and all. No, village, according to definition, is the smallest unit of administration in a government. And that is the definition. And most of us do not have this definition with us. So when we speak of village, we have our own ideas, and we have our own concept and wrong concept. Many of them are wrong concepts. The concepts are not clear. So for a communicator, the conceptual clarity is something which is very, very, very important. So once the communicator has the conceptual clarity, then he can communicate it to the students in a better way. So many times we fail in communication because communication depends upon the fields of experience of communicator and the communicator. Maybe we had seen rains for weeks together, and then very heavy rains. In case I try to communicate this to the children of today, they can never understand because they have never seen such rains at all. The rains of the ancient days and the rains of today, they are very, very different. So automatically, my experiences, if they are if they are similar to the others' experience, then they can just understand. Otherwise, the field of experience, if they are very much different, we will not be able to understand it all. This is what exactly happens, children of village, they know about many trees, they know the names of many trees, whereas if a child of the town is made to speak to the child of a village, the communication does not occur because the child of the town may know about number of vehicles, names of the vehicles, whereas child of the village may know about the trees and the experiences may not be similar at all. So one thing which we should always remember happens to be communication occurs wherever the fields of experiences of the communicator and the communicatee, they overlap. Otherwise, no. Maybe for a vegetarian person, a pure vegetarian person, kaima or maybe mutton biryani, its taste can never be understood. And when we translate it, translation may be just like some paisa, that this and all. The taste of the vegetarian is entirely different from the taste of a non-vegetarian as such. So communication depends upon the field of experience. So maybe when two friends in the same field, the farmers, they meet, there is a lot of communication. When two friends of business, they meet, there is a lot of communication. When two friends from a teaching profession, they meet, there is a lot of communication. Two software engineers, when they meet, there is a lot of communication, whereas the communication, between the people of different fields, it becomes a little difficult because the fields of experiences are different. So bring them to your field of experience is the idea. The thing is, first of all, give them the experiences and then try to make them, try to go on speaking. That's why we say experiences can actually make communication better. In case you want to speak about a scooter, its parts, etc., take the child to a scooter and then make him sit there and show the bolts and nuts, that this and all, and then starts communicating and maybe handling those things. With the experiences, first-hand experiences as we call, all the communication becomes very clear as such. So communications become very clear with the direct first-hand experiences. This is one aspect of it. That is why maybe people like Jerome S. Bruner and others, they started speaking about the education system of today, and they said it is only mere verbal learning which is taking place. It is verbal transaction, and actually nobody is getting the meaning as such, nobody is getting the concept as such. As they are not getting the concept, as there is no concept formation, it is no education at all. The whole process is a blasphemy, it is a nuisance actually, and they went on imparting a lot of importance to rather discovery learning, maybe direct experiences as such. So it is true that direct experiences make the communication better. Maybe when a child has seen the kangaroo, its experience is different, and then seeing the kangaroo, experiencing or maybe the direct experiences with a kangaroo, maybe in the zoo, etc., that is different than maybe when I am trying to communicate it through my language. Maybe children, kangaroo is an animal which bears its young one in the, automatically the child who has not seen the kangaroo may get an idea of the mother monkey carrying the little one and then moving on the tiles, etc., So the child may not be getting the concept or the idea, picture of the kangaroo. Instead, it may get the concept of a monkey in its mind. So maybe words like, donkey is something like a horse. If the donkey is not seen by the child at all, then of course the concept which comes in the mind is entirely different. It is once again the concept of horse only, not of donkey. So first-hand experiences are the best experiences, and maybe by doing anything, the understanding will be better, the concepts will be clear, and then maybe communication becomes very nice with the first-hand experiences, direct experiences. Direct experiences are the best experiences. Through direct experiences, understanding is better. There will be conceptual clarity, everything is alright, but the lifespan is so short, and we will not be able to have all the direct experiences as such. So, action and then learning. Acting, reflecting and learning, or maybe understanding, all the things becomes difficult. So maybe the second type of experiences we will have is are simulated experiences, not inactive experiences, but almost iconic experiences. We call them as icons are there, figures are there, pictures are there, maybe idols are there, models are there, and when we just have them as such, the concepts becomes a little clearer as such. The thing is, here we are speaking with charts, we are speaking with maybe photographs, we are speaking with some models, maybe working models, non-working models, etc., etc. And the communication will be actually effective with such things. The third set of experiences, they are all very symbolic experiences. Symbolic experiences, I mean, like rather the numbers are symbols, the language is a symbol, every word is a symbol, and when you come to this symbolic experience, understanding so many times becomes very, very difficult as such. But most of the learning, most of the verbal experiences, see, they are symbolic only. And words as such, they are arbitrarily selected sounds, phonemes, and then meaning is imparted to them. Maybe we call in Kannada neeru for water. In Hindi, it is pani. And maybe these two words are entirely different, and the meaning is imparted by the people there. So as the words differ from place to place, the meaning also differs from place to place. The language, rather verbal learning becomes very, very difficult as such. Verbal communication is always the most difficult form of communication. But in adults, maybe verbal communication is the only type of communication which we may have to do as such. Maybe in the primary school or maybe pre-primary schools, the pictures in the textbooks, the pictures or paintings take a dominant place and letters take a small place. And as we come to the books on higher education, you may not have any pictures, etc., etc. Letters take a dominant part as such. So the verbal learning takes a dominant part in the higher education, maybe in the higher communication aspects as such. Maybe the objection on verbal learning is that only there is a word transaction and it's almost a business like giving words and not the meaning, etc. In a way made all the education throughout meaningless. Higher education, which is verbal and verbal only, according to Jerome Spooner and others, it became totally useless, worthless, and maybe meaningless as such. So it was David Ausubel who gave us a theory, and he converted mere verbal learning into meaningful verbal learning. Now we human beings are capable of giving meaning to the words as such, and maybe when we are communicating, what are the defects as such? Ausubel clearly spoke about an anchorage which is lacking in what we speak so many times. Maybe he proposed a theory, Ausubel's theory of meaningful receptive learning, as we call it, is an excellent theory which supports verbal communication as such. So verbal communication can be effective. It can be made effective when the meaning of each word which we communicate is known to the communicatee as such. Maybe if I say all of us are to be sanguine, maybe this may not carry any meaning to anybody because the word sanguine is rarely known to the people. Sanguine is a synonym to optimism. And if I say let us all be optimistic, then automatically the meaning gets communicated. And even if the optimism is not known, if I give a small incidence, who is an optimist, who is not an optimist, give an illustration that there is a half-filled tank, and maybe one comes and says that it is half filled, and what next? And he has a negative thinking. Another person comes and then he is very happy that it is half filled and it is sufficient for the time being, and call the second as the optimist and first as the pessimist. And then with these illustrations, maybe people get the meaning actually as such. Maybe later on, if I say we should be sanguine, the communicative gets the meaning as such. So if we confirm that each word which the communicator is using is known to the communicator, meaning is known to the communicator, then communication is quite possible. A good communication is possible through verbal so as such. So maybe the first principle of communication is that I should use words whose meanings are clearly known to my communicator. So many times we are happy with the language. Some of us have bombastic language, some of us have superfluous language, and some of us get words from somewhere and try to use them. This superfluous language does not communicate anything to anybody. Maybe the people go on nodding their head. They say, very standard lecture. Very standard lecture so many times means that a lecture which is not comprehended properly. Because the thing is, many of the words, when the communicator does not know, he feels that the language is very, very high-flown language, etc. A communicator should try to make the language as simple as possible. Simple I mean, lucid I mean, comprehensible. Here also once again, the same principle of Sanskrit comes into the picture. I should know, I should be parengita prajna, that means I should know what the communicator knows quite well. What words communicator knows, what experiences he has, and whose meanings are known. Otherwise, I should confirm. If I am using a new word, catalyst, for example, I should just ask them, do you know what catalyst means? So in case they say catalyst is known to them, then I should proceed on my ideas about catalyst. So many times it so happens in communication that without knowing what the communicator knows, and we make a try to impress them with what we know as such. So many times, many of the lecturers, many of the teachers, many of the communicators, they want to show their language capacity to the communicators, and they use a superfluous language. Superfluous language, maybe sometimes called as very heavy loaded terms, should not be used in communication in case it should become communication. Otherwise, only words are thrown and meaning is not got. It will be a head-on exercise and nothing goes inside the head as such. Maybe the first principle happens to be know what the communicator knows and then start transacting with them. Sometimes in teaching we say come down to the communicator's level, and of course we come down to the communicator's level to communicate, but we will not stay there as such. We should take them up, slowly help them to go up. So many times the communicators come down and then they will not go up at all. It is not that. Come down to their level, start transacting, go on adding more and more by bridging what is known to the unknown as such. Almost communication is like a simile. Simile means wherein we bridge the known to the unknown as such. Communicator already knows something and he does not know something else. So in case we can make him know the unknown through the known, that is the best communication as such. Maybe to give an example, maybe in poetry we find similes wherein a girlfriend's face, the fiance's face is compared to the moon, etc. etc. Beautiful simile. Moon is known. His fiance's face is not known. So we bridge the fiance's face with what is known, that is moon, and it's called a simile, and bridging something is known to the person as such. Maybe in your place you grow such and such a thing, in the other place something else is grown. Automatically there is a bridge between that and this. Maybe a person in Navy may try to bridge what he knows to the army, which is unknown. That means in all these places there is a bridging, and this bridging helps communication quite a lot. Communication is nothing else than bridging the known to the unknown as such. Fine, the second problem with communication happens to be anchorage. So many times we go on speaking, we do speak for hours together, and each sentence is a marvelous sentence. But the person will not be able to carry them together because there is no link between the first sentence and the second sentence. Maybe the first concept and the second concept. So many beautiful concepts, so many beautiful proverbs, so many beautiful, all those are thrown actually. And then it's be very, very difficult for the people to gather them together. So maybe while communicating, there is an anchorage, there is a link between one idea and the other idea. This is what is called as ideational scaffolding. The people will be able to carry it very easily. That's what in Basaveshwara, in one of his vachanas says, Nudidare Muttina Haradam Tiravedu. It should be a garland of pearls as such. If the pearls are thrown, and if they are thrown on the ground, it is very difficult to gather. But if they are actually woven, or rather as a small garland, and if there is a thread inside, there is a sutra as we call inside, which is not clearly seen, but it is there. It holds all the pearls together. It becomes a garland. It is very easy to carry the whole garland as. So maybe when I am presenting something, if the presentation is a long one, I should see to it that there is a link between what I say first, the next, etc., etc. If we are speaking about science, there is a beautiful logical order, and the logical order is to be followed. If you are speaking about history, maybe there is a chronological order, and maybe whenever you speak about some subject, there is an order inbuilt in the subject as such, and this should be known. And if this is clearly known and there is an anchorage, it will be very, very easy for the communicator to accept the ideas as such. Oswald does give us the idea of sending advanced organizers. The thing is, if I have some concept to be spoken about, maybe ask the communicator to think about the concept earlier itself. Maybe I have to speak about communication, and then maybe I ask them, now go through communication and come prepared, and then automatically he has some idea, and my model becomes almost a clarification model, and I go on speaking about communication, and the things are better understood than earlier. So otherwise also, if I go on confirming that whatever ideas I am communicating, the ideas required to communicate my ideas are already there in the mind. For example, it so happens, I speak about acceleration. To speak about acceleration, the children should have the idea of velocity. To know the idea of velocity, the children should have the idea of speed. And if the children have to know the idea of speed, they should have the idea of motion as such. And then maybe motion, time, and then the points from where to where, etc. All these ideas are to be known in case the child has to understand about acceleration. There is a logic. And if I go on building it logically in this way, everything is understood properly. But if I start speaking about acceleration, prior to or without knowing whether they have the idea of velocity, variable velocity, etc., no concept is properly understood by the children as such. So whenever we start speaking about, maybe not only this, otherwise in a preaching, ceremonious preaching, if I have to speak about Advaita, etc., then automatically it requires the idea of Atma, Paramatma, soul and great soul. And if the idea of soul and great soul is not there, the idea of Advaita or Dvaita or Vishishta Dvaita can never be spoken about. I should try to know whether the people are aware of, people have the concepts, maybe I call them as sub-concepts, which are required for communicating my concept. And then maybe if they have not known, I should make them know that and then proceed. So there are several which can make verbal communication a very, very effective one. Verbal communication, can never be disposed of, because most of our learning, most of our communication depends upon verbal communication only. Maybe there are communication gaps because of the speed as such. One goes on speaking very speedily, the other will be able to catch few things, leave the other things, and now there are number of gaps called as communication gaps. Maybe there are gaps of reception as such, and there can be many gaps. But if the gaps are filled up, verbal communication can be a very, very effective medium. Whenever we are communicating, we see that there are number of facts which we communicate. Facts are sentences, so to say, which is made up of words, meaningful group of words as such. Some information is contained in it. Maybe I got up early in the morning, maybe at 3 o'clock, is a sentence which gives you some information. Maybe I always get up early, maybe is another sentence which gives some information. This information, this fact has few words contained in it, and these things are to be only memorized or maybe recognized for a time and then recalled if required later on. Such informations are ample, and there is an explosion of information, and maybe if you just go to the net and open the net, you get information and there is no dearth for information at all. So even we people will have a lot of information with us, and information, they are the fact form. Maybe so and so discovered oxygen, Priestley discovered oxygen is an information. Discovered oxygen in such and such a year is an information. And maybe Shivaji won the battle is an information. And Plassey was fought at this place is an information. Trump won the election is an information. And all these facts, all these which we call as facts or information, which are to be only memorized and remembered, are to be very clear. Now when I am sending an information has some elements, and all the elements are to be clear to me. So if I take an information like Priestley discovered oxygen, there is a name like Priestley, and his action, that is discovered, and then an object like oxygen as such. All the three are important elements of the information, and I should just try to communicate all the three. So many times so happens that in a hurry, Priestley's name is communicated, but neither oxygen nor the word which it is communicated. Or maybe oxygen is communicated, the other two are not communicated properly. So as an emphasis on all the three things are to be given, and this can only be remembered. And the information or facts are simply to be remembered as such, and nothing else can be done. There is no meaning, which we import information. If I say that my name is Gopal Krishna, it's an information, and you will have to remember my name as Gopal Krishna, and maybe you can't find out the meaning, etc., for the information as such. Maybe if you say Sambhaji was the son of Shivaji, you can't ask a question like why. There is no reason behind it. Maybe there is nothing to understand. It is only to remember these two names, Shivaji, Sambhaji, and the relationship between them, that is to be remembered. So maybe if you go on passing on such information, there is a lot of information, and if all these things are to be remembered, there is a limitation to the memory of a person as such. It becomes a little bit difficult. So what we exactly do happens to be, we rather bring the information together. All the facts are put together, and we will have a central idea, and that was what I was calling as concept. Central idea is a concept. So we get a meaning here, and then we start communicating the meaning instead of the facts as such. Maybe for example, Rama is a known, Sita is a known, Lakshmana is a known, Ravana is a known, Trump is a known, Obama is a known. All these are facts. And I can't just, go on remembering all these things. If I consider them, all these were names of the person. Names of the persons are knowns. Then there is a central idea. And then this is what is called as a concept. Knowns are names of persons, maybe places, or maybe objects, etc., etc. Now, if I get this concept, then the things become easy. What exactly has happened is, I have gathered a central idea. There is a summative idea as such, and we usually try to communicate these central ideas or concepts as such. So anywhere when we are communicating, the ideas are to be communicated and not facts as such. There is no meaning in saying, the guava has green leaves, papaya has green leaves, mango has green leaves, etc., etc. Put them all together and then say the plants have leaves which are green in color. Now this becomes a concept. Concepts are central ideas, or maybe we can say it is the essence of number of facts. So the facts are to be put together and the essence is to be taken. The essence is the meaning, and this essence is to be communicated and not the facts. That's why we say maybe make communication conceptual as such. Maybe while understanding the concept, there are three stages, as Bloom would put it. The first one is translation. This translation is not the language translation, but this is the translation of idea. This is called as ideational translation. So the communicator is speaking something, and his ideas get translated into the ideas of the communicator. So later on there is a stage which is very, very important, and that important stage is called as interpretation. The communicator interprets the idea. That means maybe here he is getting a meaning. The meaning which is got by the communicator is his own, and it is not the meaning of the communicator. The thing is, meanings cannot be communicated. Meaning is got by the communicator himself. This is called interpretation. And once he gets the meaning, he goes on expanding it, and that is called as extrapolation. So you see, in communication, communicating a concept, communicating the meaning as such, we communicators go on speaking. Communicator translates our ideas into his ideas, and later on he interprets the idea, and then he gives a meaning to that idea, and then his meaning gets extrapolated. He goes on expanding his idea, and remember, there can be a very big gap between the idea of the communicator and the communicator. Maybe this is, there may be a number of barriers also in communication. One of the barriers happens to be, there is something wrong in the translation itself. I give an idea and he gets some other idea. So many times, we translate the children, we say, elephant is a very big animal. And later on the next day we say, sun is a very big star. The child starts asking, is the sun bigger than the elephant? The thing is now, I hope you, the translations, there is some problem with the translation of the ideas. Maybe all of you remember the language exercise which used to be there, called as precise writing. Maybe some 3 paras are given, and maybe several sentences are there that is to be cut down into 1/3, and then a title is to be given, and then later on several questions are asked, and you have to answer them in your own language. So the first exercise of precise writing exactly is translating the ideas which are there in the paragraphs into your ideas. So maybe, usually that's what exactly happens. If I speak for an hour, all those things will not be there. Well, in the translation, it becomes concise and maybe the ideas are got and it becomes precise as such. So that's the first stage of translation. Second stage actually is giving a title. When you give a title, exactly you have got the essence, ideas in the passages which are given, and you give a title to it as such. So titles at this juncture maybe I am compelled to speak about a small experience which Paul Torrance puts in his guiding creativity. Maybe a story of a missionary who went to South Africa was given the class, it seems. And this Dickens goes to South Africa, and like other stories, there is a savage, and then there is a leader of the savage, and then automatically this priest is caught, and what exactly they are about to hang him because he is white and that this and all. But remember, the daughter of the savage king there, she loves this Dickens, and then later on she says that he should be saved, and she wants to marry him. King there, he gives an option to the father that if he marries his daughter, he will become the leader, and there won't be any problem at all. But as if the missionary does not accept, and then the missionary is hanged. So after telling this story, the children were asked to give a title, and so many people give a title as maybe sacrifice, missionary work, missionary zeal, sacrifice, etc., etc. And then there was one child, it seems, who said, "Foolish Dickens." That was the title given. Because when he was asked why that, actually his answer was, had he married that lady, then he would have saved his life. And after saving life only, everything can be done. He was quite foolish in not marrying her. As such, meanings got by different people are different. So when you give a title, different interpretations are there. Whenever we are speaking, maybe you speak about Ramayana, and then go on speaking about Rama sending Sita to the forest, etc., etc. Child of today may get a meaning that Rama was wrong instead of Rama is right, because it is his interpretation. It is not my interpretation. So meanings are always given by the communicator and not by the communicated one. Whatever meaning I get gets expanded. As I was quoting about Rama, maybe there are stories on Rama sending Sita and Sita suffering, etc. All these are extrapolations on their own ideas. Sita is taken as the greatest destroyer in the earth, in the stories, recent stories. That is the extrapolation of their own interpretation, and not the interpretation. As far as the interpretations are concerned, always it differs from person to person. That is why the meaning of concepts, maybe in sciences, they may not differ very much, but in humanities, the interpretations, the meanings which are given to the concepts differ from person to person as such. So here we should be very careful in sending the message. So while sending the message, we should try to see to it that translation or ideation as translation is almost proper, and interpretation also should be helped. And maybe later on, once they get the meaning, they can expand as they like as such. So once you get the concepts are also many. So take any subject for that matter, there are ample of concepts, and then sometimes you use a word like technical terminology. Technical terminology in Sanskrit is called as paribhashika padas. Force for physics is different, force for history is different. So they have different meanings, and in each subject we fix the meanings And we say this is the boundary and this is the meaning, this is a definite definition. We define the boundaries very much. So maybe these concepts, all the concepts will have a definition. They should have the definition. Village should have a definition. That means the meaning is made very clear there. Maybe democracy should have a definition. Maybe force should have a definition. Work should have a definition. So all these words, when they are defined properly, the meaning becomes proper. Otherwise, if they are not defined properly, the words may give any meaning to anybody. When I say fast, maybe fast may mean make it fast, write fastly, maybe walk fast, or it may in a Ramjan month mean don't eat anything for our Muslim friends as such. Maybe here in all these instances, the words take meanings according to situation. They have contextual meaning, and we should be very careful about the contextual meanings of words. Let us try to analyze what exactly we mean by meaning. What exactly is the concept of the concept as such. So if somebody asks you, define a dog, it becomes very difficult. How do you define it? You may say it's an animal. So automatically I am also an animal, you are also an animal, and automatically all of us become dogs. So maybe if you say it's a domestic animal, cow becomes a dog, because cow is also a domestic animal. If you say maybe dog is an animal which barks, then maybe those people who come to the mimicry and bark very nicely, they become dogs. Or sometimes a dog which can't bark because of so many reasons, a dumb dog does not become a dog. See, it is really difficult to define the terms, words as such. So, maybe what we exactly do is we will go for the criteria. Every sentence is right. It is an animal is right. It has 4 legs may be right. It barks also is right. It is domestic is also right. Put all these criteria together and then you have the concept of dog as such. Maybe a simple question like, what is the meaning of chair? No, automatically we fumble. And though we have used the word and it has, we have not thought very deeply about the word as such, maybe we go on explaining it in different way. A chair is an object which has maybe a base and then later on a seat, and with the seat there should be a rest also. Maybe if these 3 things are there, no, what I call as base happens to maybe 4 legs are there, or maybe 3 legs, and then it's called as 3-legged chair, and now maybe there may be base, maybe only one, then also a seat, a rest at the back, and then a base if it is there, we call it as a chair. If the backrest is not there, it becomes a stool, it does not become a chair. So maybe a clear thinking, a clear concept if it is there, now we, the criteria happens to be an object which has a base, maybe a seat, and backrest is called as a chair. Now we have got the essential criteria of the chair as such. Arms may be there, may not be there. If the arms are there, then of course it becomes an armed chair. Maybe if it is a metal, made out of metal, it becomes a metal chair. Made out of wood, it becomes a wooden chair. See, all these are secondary criteria for a chair. But what is very, very important happens to be, it should have a base, a seat, and a rest. Most of us will not be able to define it properly as such, because we haven't thought about the criteria. Criteria give us the meaning. There are essential criteria, there are secondary criteria. So communicators should think of these very much, because whenever you say meaning means the essential criteria. Maybe see the drawings of the children as such. Sometimes ask them to draw a house. And when they draw a house, they have a concept in their mind. their house will have the essential criteria as such in the drawing. What is the essential criteria of a house? What is a house? What do you mean by a house? So maybe sometimes you think of palatial buildings, etc., etc. No, that is not the idea. A house should have a ceiling. House should have maybe two walls as such. Maybe house should have an opening for coming and going. In its simple definition, it should have three criteria as such. Maybe a ceiling at the top, and then maybe a wall to protect us, and then a door from which we can enter and come back. If these three criteria are there, they are to be called as houses only. Maybe these criteria exist even in the palatial buildings, even in the smallest house possible. And other things, you see, a terrace, maybe, it may be a tail, okay, it's also a house. It may be a hut. Even in the hut, you find these three essential criteria. So now, if the communicator thinks about the criteria clearly, essential criteria clearly, the secondary criteria very clearly, if he is clear about this criteria, then we say he is a man with conceptual clarity, and when he communicates these ideas, the meaning becomes clear, the criteria become clear. And then how do you establish it? How do you clear a concept? Concepts are all clear, they become very, very clear. Conceptual clarity occurs with number of examples. So give the other person examples as such. In DVG, in his Kagga quotes, Tarani Darshanakinta, Kirana Sulava, Paramatattvakinta, Sari Udahara. Udahara are examples, you see. It is very difficult to see the sun, but maybe his rays and they give us a beautiful experience. Similarly, the principles are very difficult, but when you go on giving number of examples, the things become clear and we will be able to understand things. So a communicator should be able to give ample of examples, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as many examples as possible to make his ideas clear to the communicator. So at the same time, you should give non-examples, those which are not examples. Because examples give us a criteria, non-examples show us the limitations of the concept as such. If one goes on doing it, fine, in whichever subject it is, whatever he is speaking, then automatically the communication becomes as clear as possible. So maybe concepts also are ample in number, sub-concepts and concepts, they are ample in number. Why do we go for concepts? Concepts, when they are brought together, you will have a principle. So maybe when you see there were facts, innumerable facts, and as I told you, if we open the internet, you get facts, and facts only, lot of information. There is an abundant. Then all these facts are brought together to make them concepts. And now the concepts are to be brought together. Could we bring the concepts together? There are relations between one concept and another concept. To be very clear, maybe concept of pressure has some relation with the concept of temperature. And temperature, it has some relation with the volume. And then automatically we bring them together. As the pressure increases, the volume decreases in case the temperature is constant. This is a law. This is a principle. And maybe with all the nouns, they will take plural form and automatically words will have yes form. That means Rama, Ramas, Lakshmana, Lakshmana. That's a principle. Nouns will take their plural form. At the same time, maybe the verbs will have their past tense form in this way. They will be used in this way. All these are principles. Principles always bring the concepts together. And these principles have application in life. As soon as I say, in the third person, the yes form is to be used. Automatically, the child starts using it as so and so goes to, Rama goes to market, Lakshmana goes to market, and he does the work, etc. The yes form is taken, and this is for application. All the principles are for application as such. So now the facts were brought together and made bundles, rather no central ideas was taken, and that was called as a concept. And now concepts are brought together, they become principles, and principles are for application in life. So similarly, when you put the principles together, you have a scheme. Number of principles are put together, and you have a scheme. And many engineers, they speak about schemes, etc. This is my scheme. This is the schemes we have. And when you bring the schemes together, we have themes. So maybe we speak of the theme. Maybe Ramayana has a theme of religion. Mahabharata has a theme of religion. As the thing is, all of them had a theme like religion. Shakespearean dramas, they had a theme of betrayal. And many other literature had a theme of love, romance as such. Now, love is a theme, religion is a theme, betrayal is a theme. There are themes, and on the themes, there are schemes. And then in the schemes, you can see a number of principles are there. And in the principles, whenever you see, there are concepts. And concepts have a lot of facts. In the reverse order, the information, lot of information which is there is to be compressed into concepts, and then concepts are to be brought together and made principles, and principles, when they are brought together, they become schemes, and then schemes put together make them themes. So though we know about the themes, we start with the facts, and then the concepts, and then the principles for application as such. Let me just speak something about the principles as such. The principles, usually we teach the students of 10th standard or 8th standard about electricity, and we speak about a fuse. A student, the students who learn physics in 8th, 9th standard, they know about fuse and why fuse is kept in the house, etc., etc. But so many times when the current goes off in the house, the child is incapable of going to the fuse, interpret it as something has gone wrong in the fuse there in the house. But they would just say, telephone to the, dial to the KEB, etc., etc. The thing is, if somebody who learns about fuse gets confused when the fuse has gone, the whole learning becomes meaningless. We only say that he is incapable of application. Though the student writes well, gets 99% in the physics paper on the question in electricity, if he fails in his life, the total learning becomes useless. Similarly, whatever we understand, if it is not applicable to life, the thing is, understanding becomes totally useless. So, the word meaning, has a synonym in Sanskrit called as artha. Artha means meaning, and artha also means usefulness. In case whatever we have learned is not useful to life, it becomes totally meaningless as such. So totally whatever we communicate and whatever we get communicated is to be totally useful in the life as such. Life is the most important, and usually whatever is related to life gets communicated very easily, it is understood very easily, and it is understood properly as such. So most of the communicators have to analyze whatever content they have in a very nice way. Content, I mean the subject matter as such. Whether it is physics, whether it is history, whether it is civics, whether it is chemistry or mathematics, every subject, as it is called as, has some content, and nobody should be contented with the content they have got. So they should have a very clear concepts to get the concept clarity, conceptual clarity as we call it as content clarity as such, one has to analyze the content into small pieces as such. That is what is called as content analysis. But when you take the content, content has themes. Content has themes which are made up of number of schemes, and schemes which are made up of principles, principles which are made up of concepts, concepts which are made up of abundant, innumerable facts as such. So, first of all, a person who tries to communicate should know all these things. Right from the theme to the facts, he should have an analysis. And a fact is to be analyzed into elements as such. Usually, the elements of facts contain number of words. Maybe as I started my this lecture as such, Rama went to market. Has three elements here. One is Rama, second is went, and third is market. Rama killed Ravana has actually once again three elements. Rama and the verb called as killed and the object Ram. So once again, these words can be analyzed, and when you analyze the words, you get letters there, alphabets there, and maybe alphabets also can be analyzed into phonemes. So maybe the sounds which they make, because maybe a word like pseudopodia is to be pronounced properly, and if the pronunciation goes wrong, the meaning goes wrong, maybe the students will not be able to catch it. Anybody communicate, peace will not be able to catch it. That is why our analysis should go to this extent. That is, when you take a word, the word is to analyze it into alphabets or words as such, letters as such, and letters also in the phonemes, the sounds which they make are to be clearly understood, analyzed by the communicator. So maybe each concept is to be analyzed. Concepts are made up of number of facts as such, and the facts are to be clearly understood. And maybe a concept, its clarity depends upon the criteria as such. So a person should have a number of examples which contain the essential criteria, and he should have non-examples which do not have the criteria as such. As I was quoting, if there is a base, a seat, and a backrest, then it is a chair. If the backrest is lacking, then it does not become a chair, it becomes a stool. The difference between the stool and the chair lies with a criteria like backrest. So maybe armed chair and chair, there is a difference. So only when the chair, that means a stand, a seat, and the backrest goes with two arms, that is called as armed chair. Maybe taking as who sits on it, you can call it as a philosopher's chair. A philosopher usually he is supposed to sit on the armchair and then maybe thinking. So now the number of terms do emerge like this. So one should know about the essential criteria. Essential criteria are very, very important. So many times when we analyze the essential criteria of a concept, children give us a beautiful insight in it. So when you ask a child to draw the snake, automatically the structure, a single curved line is drawn. That is the essential line which is required for a snake. And of course, the mother and father, they are drawn by the children. Maybe a face, maybe body, legs, and maybe hands, limbs. Automatically, it gives us the essential criteria. So maybe when we have to speak about the village, the essential criteria like it is an administrative unit of the unit which is very small. These essential criteria are to be highlighted as such. There are structural definitions, there are functional definitions, and there are complex concepts which neither belong to, neither can be defined by structure nor by function, which are complex, this one as such, but all the criteria now we should be able to clearly analyze. So one who has the criteria clarity is supposed to have a conceptual clarity. Most of us, unluckily, do not have conceptual clarity. Maybe most of us will not be visualize what we say. So if you can visualize what you say, that means you have the conceptual clarity as such. So many times, we will be explaining a poem like daffodils and flowers, etc., etc. But none of us will be able to draw the daffodils, and none of us have a beautiful picture of daffodils in front of us. It means we have words, but we don't have the image or icon in front of us. Maybe long back it so happened that some LKG teacher was speaking about a demon, three-eyed demon who had two curved teeth as such. Suddenly there came a question by the child as to how was the curved teeth, whether it was from upside down or downside up. A teacher had never thought of, she had never imagined, and she started fumbling. And of course, she was intelligent. She put back the question to the child itself, and automatically the child answered. It should be from above to below. That means, from the nose downward, because in case it is otherwise, the teeth will go and hurt the eyes as such. So the child had the image, but teacher never had the image in front of her. Maybe so many times it so happens. A child, of course, a very small child was speaking to the others. It seems, how do you eat this, what is it, gram, etc., etc. And automatically, the other child was asking that, it will just churn it. And this child said, God is there even in the gram. That is why I don't churn it at all. I would swallow it complete, because God should not be paid. You see, the thing is, child has a concept. We go on saying that God is everywhere, that this and all to the children. And the child, see the thinking of the child. If God is there everywhere, he should be in the gram also. And in case we just chew it, churn it, automatically God will be paying. Children get such concepts because they are imaginative, one thing. We have not imagined the things properly, that's the other thing. So a person should be able to visualize, he should be able to find what are the icons to whatever he speaks. So then we say that the communicator has a conceptual clarity. Many of us on the Kili do not have the conceptual clarity. Many of us communicators, we do not know the criteria, and most of us do not know the meaning of what we exactly say. Then it comes in a wholesale, the sentences comes in a wholesale, and we have never made an analysis of the words, we have never made an analysis of the phonemes and morphemes there. So only when a person goes deep into all these things, when the analysis is very clear, the communication will be very clear, and maybe translation becomes clear, interpretation becomes clear, and then extrapolation becomes clear. We are, so many times, I should say, not very definite. Not definite about anything. So, catch hold of somebody who is speaking, ask him, what is the meaning? How do you define? He will not be able to define many of the words which he uses. Each word has a definition. I started my lecture with the experience as such. Experience, a word which is used again and again, many of us will not be able to define. And once again, a word like village we use again and again, we are not capable of defining. In case to catch hold of somebody and ask him to define what exactly is democracy, once again, you can just see, we fumble, we will not be able to define it properly because we do not know the criteria. Most of the concepts we use, we are not very definite. If somebody else asks us the question, is this not alright? You would say, maybe that also is alright, this also is alright, something else also is alright, because we do not have a complete hold on the concept. And when this happens, communication actually cannot be proper at all. So for a communicator, it is very, very important to have a clear analysis of the content, analysis of the subject matter into themes, then schemes, then principles, and principles to the concepts, and concepts to the facts as such. So one should know what is to be focused and what is not to be focused also. Everywhere it is true. This is called as principle of focusing. Most of us, we do not focus on the proper things at all. Maybe take a word like red blood. Red blood. The thing is here, so many times the people will be focusing on, they will be stressing on, they will be emphasizing red blood. Blood is always red. It can't be anywhere else. So the thing is, what is to be stressed, what is to be emphasized is blood and not red. Red need not be focused at all. But yet it so happens that we would just focus on the word which is not to be focused. Most of us do not think about which is to be stressed. Here also, so many times facts become very important. We go on emphasizing facts again and again. We give so many facts to children and we make everything factual. No, the central idea is always important. Even in rather, if I am speaking about a company's history, who started it, etc., they are all factual informations. They are not very important for a salesman. His product, the benefits of the product, and maybe what benefit the customer will make out of it is to be focused rather than the history, that this and all. But so many times in the factual information also we focus on facts which are not required and do not focus very much on what is the meaning of it, the usefulness of it, etc. So when you come to the concept, the criteria or examples are to be focused and concepts should be made very, very clear. Until the concepts are clear, concepts in a way are like bricks with which we construct the mansion of communication as such. Only when the concepts become clear, I should just proceed. Maybe in mathematics, there is a concept of fraction, and only after the concept of fraction becomes very, very clear, I should proceed to proper fraction, and then to improper fraction, and then to mixed fraction as such. But we hurry up. We do not allow time for consolidation at all in communication. The thing is, we will in such a hurry that before forming a proper concept, we would just proceed and then finish our work. No, that should not be done. A good communicator would see to it that every concept consolidates. Concepts consolidate with the ideas of criteria as such. Maybe these concepts, when they are put together, become principles, and principles are most important. Principles are applied to life, and we should see to it that the principles are applied. It is not enough in case you say in language, third person singular will have S form of the word. You should try to use them and use in the language, and then these grammar rules, these principles of the grammar are not just to be crammed up. They are not facts actually. They are not to be crammed up and written in the examination. It should be used in the language as such, in every expression which one makes. So maybe sometimes we say R need not be pronounced at certain junctures. The thing is, it should come in the language, it should be applied in the language, and then of course we should know. SHOULD, no, L is to be made silent. If this is said, we should use it, and it is not that we know it, but we use it in the other way as such. So every principle is to be used in the life. Whatever we apply, whatever we use again and again, we will never forget. So maybe I have learned several things when I was in the primary school, and I don't remember any one of them because I have not used it again and again. The memory is such, in case something is not used, it will not there in the repertoire for a long time. It will not be in the store. So we should see to it that we give the communicating very, very useful things in life only. Maybe some people are in the habit of teaching children with a number of words like Chaitra, Vishaka, Jeshta, Ashada, etc. Names of the months, maybe Mesha, Vrishabha, etc. Everything is taught, and the children do capture them as the best words and not with their meaning. Children will not know the meaning, but they will know the words only, and all these words will vanish within an year or two, because January, February, etc. That means these Christian months are being used, and the other names or nomenclature is not used at all. Whatever we don't use, we don't keep them in the store at all. They are lost from the store. So we should see to it that we communicate those things which are highly useful, which will be kept for a long time, which will be applied in life again and again. So our memory depends upon how much we apply, and it is enough in case we memorize those things which are applicable. Other things can be very, very easily forgotten. They can be forgotten as the jokes which we listen and laugh, maybe some facts which we get here and there and then forget, maybe a lot of news about our politicians and jokes about those politicians, laugh at them and then keep moving. So those things which are important to the life are to be remembered, and they will be remembered because life is most important. WHO quoted 10 life skills, out of which effective communication is one. Effective communication is a very, very important life skill, and maybe our lives depend upon, and they are made happy by effective communications. So maybe when we have to go for effective communication, there are several things which are speculative, imaginative. There are so many things which are logical, and so there is so much of information which is correlational, and we give all such informations through words only. I don't say that that's the only way of communication. The thing says communication can occur through gestures, communication can occur through number of other media also. But usually when we analyze our communication, verbal communication happens to be most important. So some of us are very good communicators. We communicate to the communicatee whatever is there in our mind, and of course the ideas are transferred in such an excellent way that there is no gap. Some of us are communicators of mediocre capacity. We do communicate something is communicated, the communicatees get some idea, but requires a lot of clarity later on. They go for clarification, and they are. And some of us are hopeless communicators, where we communicate something and communicatees get some other meaning. Actually, totally there is a wide gap between what one communicates and what is communicated. Communication is not a very simple as such. There are so many barriers to communication. There are ample of principles of communication. Here was an approach to analyze whatever we want to communicate, and then of course place them as facts, concepts, principles, schemes and themes, and try to communicate whatever we want to communicate in a lucid, simple, comprehensive way. Make rather communication very very comprehensible, so to say, and make it a happy event as such. Maybe we in Sanskrit call it as Parengita Prajna, knowing the psychology of the other person, speaking with that motto, knowing the needs and the interests of the other person, and then giving him whatever he wants in his life. So here was an approach. This approach was discussed in this module with the help of certain great educationists like Jerome S. Bruner and maybe David Ausubel, etc. etc. Verbal communication forms a very important link in our communication as such, and maybe how we can communicate effectively was discussed